At dinner, my mom pointed at me and said, "He pays the bills, but he'll always be the dumb one without a degree." That same night, I quietly took back the house, the cars, the money, and left them shocked, begging, and completely broken without me. I am 32, and for many years I have worked day and night to build a life that no one could take away from me. I did not have a college degree, but I had determination, and I knew how to work harder than anyone else around me. Yet that evening, sitting at the dinner table with my family, I felt smaller than ever before. My fork was frozen in my hand, my appetite gone, because of the words my mother had just said out loud, pointing straight at me. She smiled at my sister and said, "Yes, he pays the bills, but he will always be the dumb one without a degree." My sister laughed like I was a joke, snorting loudly in front of everyone. My father, sitting at the head of the table, lifted his wine glass and took a slow sip. He did not defend me. He did not say a word. The wine he was drinking was from a bottle I had brought home from a business trip in Italy. A gift from me to him. The irony burned deep in my chest. Here I was, sitting in a house that I had paid for, eating food that I had bought, watching them laugh at me as if all my efforts meant nothing. Everything around them was mine. I had bought that house and signed off the mortgage papers with my own signature, yet I put the deed in their names to make them feel secure. I bought the furniture they sat on, the plates they ate from, and even the car my mother drove to her social clubs. I had paid off every debt they once feared would destroy them, but in their eyes, none of that counted. What truly mattered to them was a piece of paper from a university that I never attended. I placed my fork down slowly and excused myself, saying I needed to use the bathroom. The truth was I needed a minute to calm myself down, to keep from saying something that could not be taken back. As I walked into the hallway, my eyes fell on the family photos hanging along the wall. My mother had placed them with pride, showing moments she thought were most important. My sister in her college graduation gown, smiling with a cap on her head. My father holding a community award, looking proud of himself. And then, in a small corner almost hidden away, was a photo of me at 18, standing beside a rusty pickup truck and holding its keys. That old truck had been the start of everything for me. While my sister lived comfortably at college, I had worked 3 part-time jobs in high school just to save enough to buy that truck. It was my first business tool. I started a small landscaping service, working long hours, sleeping inside the truck at times, eating cheap instant noodles and fighting to survive. Most people would have quit, but I could see a future others could not. I saw opportunities in every corner, and slowly I grew. By the time I was 25, I already had 12 employees and big clients. At 30, I owned multiple properties, a fleet of vehicles, and contracts with commercial companies. I had built an empire out of nothing but my own sweat and vision. But to my family, all of that still meant nothing. They only valued degrees, awards, and social recognition. 3 years ago, my parents had been on the edge of losing everything. My father's accounting firm was about to collapse, my mother's medical bills had buried them in debt, and their credit cards were maxed out. They were weeks away from foreclosure. Who did they call? Me. And without hesitation, I saved them. I paid off their mortgage, bought them a new house, and cleared every debt they had. I even paid for my sister's tuition when she lost her funding. I thought I was a good son, a good brother. I thought money could buy peace and love. But that night, hiding in the hallway, I overheard them talking when I was gone. My sister whispered that she felt embarrassed telling her professor friends about me, because I had no degree. My mother said she worried about my future, asking what would happen when I could no longer do manual work, not knowing I hadn't done physical labor in years. My father murmured that they should be nicer to me, but his voice carried no real conviction. And that was when it hit me. This was not about education. This was about control. They liked to believe they were above me, that I was just their bank account but never their equal. They wanted to believe their achievements outweighed mine, even as they lived off my sacrifices. That night, after saying a polite goodbye and driving back to my penthouse apartment, a place they never cared to visit, I sat at my kitchen island with a glass of scotch. The city lights sparkled beneath me, and for the first time, I saw the truth clearly. I did not need their approval. I did not need to keep carrying them on my shoulders. I opened my laptop and began pulling every plug, one by one. The house payment? Cancelled. The credit cards? Removed. The car loans? No longer my problem. The health insurance? Ending with the current plan. The monthly allowance? Stopped immediately. My sister's tuition? Gone. The extra clients I secretly referred to my father's business? All cut off. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. 2 weeks later, the first crack appeared. My mother called me one morning, her voice tense and panicked. She told me the bank had sent a notice that the house payment was missed and late fees were being added. She could not understand what had happened since it was always taken care of. I answered calmly, explaining that I had restructured my finances and could no longer cover their mortgage. I reminded her gently that the house was in her name and my father's name, which made it their legal responsibility. Her voice shook as she said they could not afford that kind of payment on retirement income. I suggested perhaps my father could work to bring in more clients, or maybe she could find a part-time job. She fell silent before asking if I was punishing them. I replied quietly, "I am not sure what you mean," and ended the call. A few days later, my sister's voice exploded through the phone. She had just been told by her university that her tuition was overdue, and without immediate payment, she would be dropped from her classes. She assumed I had paid it already, like I had for years. I explained calmly that I would no longer be covering her education. I told her it was time she found loans, scholarships, or any other way adults usually handle their own school costs. She screamed that I was childish and petty. I replied with one simple question. Is it childish to expect grown adults to pay their own bills? She hung up on me. My father's call came next. He was quieter, more careful. He told me he understood business pressures and asked if we could work out some kind of payment plan or arrangement. He said my mother was very stressed about losing the house. I told him plainly that if he wanted help, we could sign an official loan agreement with collateral and interest. A real business transaction. Silence followed. He did not like that answer, and he said he would think about it. What surprised me most was not their struggles, but their reactions. None of them called to apologize for what they had said at dinner. None of them tried to admit they were wrong or that their words had hurt me. Instead, they turned me into the villain. My sister posted on social media about family members who abandon you when you need them most. My mother told her friends I was going through a midlife crisis and making reckless choices. My father kept quiet publicly, but I heard through acquaintances that he was reaching out to relatives, asking what had caused my sudden change. 6 weeks later, the confrontation happened. One morning, my assistant burst into my office looking nervous. She told me my family was in the lobby, refusing to leave. Before I could respond, they pushed past her and entered my conference room while I was meeting with my management team. I dismissed my employees, closed the door, and faced them across my long conference table. My mother's eyes were red from crying. My sister looked ready for a fight, and my father appeared older and more exhausted than I had ever seen him. My mother spoke first, demanding to know why I was destroying the family over a small comment. My sister jumped in, accusing me of being manipulative and cruel, saying I was using money to control them. I sat quietly and let them talk, pouring out their complaints. When they finally stopped, I asked one simple question. When was the last time any of you asked me how I felt about being treated like the family's ATM? The room fell silent. My mother started to speak about family duty, but I cut her off and asked again. When was the last time they showed real interest in my life beyond the money I provided? When was the last time they cared about my relationships, my goals, my dreams? My sister interrupted, saying that I never seemed to mind helping out, that I had always offered freely. I nodded and told her that was true. I helped freely because I loved them, because I wanted them to feel safe. But love and respect are supposed to be two-way streets. Then I looked at my mother and asked her to repeat what she had said at dinner. She claimed not to remember. She said she might have made a comment about education being important. At that moment, I pulled out my phone and pressed play on a recording I had accidentally made that night. I had started recording notes for a business idea but left it running while I returned to the table. Every word they had said about me was crystal clear. The silence that followed was heavy. My father lowered his eyes, clearly embarrassed. He finally spoke and said they owed me an apology. He asked what they could do to repair the relationship. My mother tried to defend herself, saying her worries were valid, even if the words were harsh. My sister doubled down, claiming that financial success without a degree was still empty. In that moment, I realized nothing I did would ever change their views. They valued status more than character, titles more than actions. So I made them an offer. I would restore enough financial support to keep them from losing their house, but only if they publicly admitted they were wrong about me. They had to acknowledge my achievements, not as a lucky accident, but as proof of my intelligence and capability. My father agreed immediately, saying he was ready to apologize. My mother seemed unsure, torn between pride and survival. My sister called it humiliating and stormed out of the room, refusing to accept any part of the deal. In the end, my parents accepted. They downsized their lifestyle, took responsibility for their car payments, and learned to live within their means. Our relationship improved slowly once they realized they could not lean on me for everything. They began to ask about my life because they wanted to, not because they needed something. My father even started referring clients to my business, not from obligation, but because he was proud of what I built. My sister, on the other hand, never spoke to me again. She dropped out of her graduate program and worked full-time to support herself, eventually finishing her degree in a different way. Ironically, I respected that effort more than anything she did while living off my money. Now, 2 years later, I am engaged to a woman who knew me before she knew about my success. She has her own career, her own independence, and together we are building a life based on respect and love, not dependence or obligation. My parents are doing fine, living more simply but finally understanding the value of responsibility. My sister has her own life, and I do not miss the relationship we lost. That dinner table moment changed everything for me. It taught me that respect cannot be bought, only demanded. It taught me that walking away from toxic patterns, even with family, is not cruel, it is necessary. That night, as I sat in my penthouse and canceled payment after payment, I thought I was destroying something. But in reality, I was building something better. A life where love is real, respect is mutual, and generosity is not mistaken for weakness. And now, whenever I think back to my mother's words, "He pays the bills, but he'll always be the dumb one without a degree," I no longer feel anger. I feel gratitude, because that sentence freed me. It showed me exactly who they were, and it reminded me exactly who I am. Not the dumb one, not the ATM, but the man who knew when enough was enough, and who finally chose himself.